Hey there, Village. Dave Paulides, Canada Missing Project, copyrighted edition for our video page. Back in the silo again, and I must tell you that the darn fires keep burning, and it's very sad. But I'm going to start you off with a story today. It happened to me yesterday. There's a location that I go to, establishment here in town, that I've been going to for a while. And I made some friends there. One person's a really good friend. And he asked me to play golf with him. He's asked me 10 times. And back when I was younger, I used to play golf a lot. In fact, the last time I played golf was with Ben. And we played in Colorado. It was a great day, fun day, memorable day. But that was probably, I was looking at a calendar last night, probably 7 years ago. And finally, this guy asked me so many times I felt bad. I just said, okay, I'll go. And it was yesterday. Smoke was brutal. Heat was brutal. And I got there, and one of the guys from this location had also decided to come along. I didn't know him real well, but I knew that he was a super nice man. And he said, hey, Dave, can I just ride in your cart with you? And we can talk, and I'm not going to play golf, but can I just go with you? I go, yeah, sure. So throughout the whole day, just super, super easygoing, polite man, 2 adult daughters who we talked a lot about during the day. Played soccer through school. He's really proud of them. Just the way a dad should be. And right near the end of the day, he said, you know, Dave, you haven't talked about your kids. He goes, I remember hearing that you had a son that played hockey. And can you tell me about him? I want to know about him. It's that crossroads in the day where, wow. I've talked to my grief counselor about these moments. What do you say? How do you approach this? How do you answer it without making the people feel uncomfortable? It's not easy. She said, Dave, you got to hit it head on. You just got to say it and live with it and understand it's something that's your issue and not theirs. So I said, yeah, my son took his life about 8 months ago and trying to recover from it. And this man's a sensitive guy. He said, oh my God, Dave, I'm really sorry. He said, I'm sorry probably 5 times. It was near the end of the round. And I told him, I said, you know, don't be sorry. It's really not anything to do with you or your fault. Don't be apologetic for asking the question. It's something I have to deal with. And because it made you uncomfortable and it put an odd spin on the day, I'm sorry for you. And I know I didn't answer the question right. And I know I really didn't give him a good background on Ben or what happened. And about an hour later, I was at home and I broke down. I felt really bad for that man. And I know it would be very awkward the next time I see him. So I think what I'm going to have to do is write him a note. And I mean, I'll really write the note, like put it in a card next time I see him and just hand it to him. And really explain that I am sorry that I put him through that. But I know that there's thousands of people out there that know somebody that took their life. And when you get confronted with those moments like I just was yesterday, how do you handle that? Especially when you're going through that grieving process, and I'll probably be going through that the rest of my life, but how do you overcome making that other person feel uncomfortable as heck? And then how do I get through it without breaking down myself? because I did a bit yesterday in front of him, and I apologized for that. But he knew it shook me up. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't have went. Played golf. Played horrible. First, I had not touched a club in all those years, so I just went, hit a few balls on the range, and then we went and played. It was a disaster. And you know, when I do those kind of things, I always feel guilty later that I'm not back in the office working. And I've had the grief counselor, I've had all my friends say, no, you got to get out and you got to do other things. The only other thing I've ever really done is fished. So, I don't know. Strange world we live in, that we're confronted with issues that never would have thought about. Truthfully, I had thought about that situation. I had brought it up to the grief counselor, and the answers weren't great. So I'll go back to her next week and explain this and see what I could have done better. So I'm going to start a new segment on these videos. And we're going to call it Just the 411 Facts. Just the 411 Facts. And we're going to call this a news segment. I've watched a lot of press briefings given by the White House in the last 20 years. And I didn't really understand until it was explained the other day about how these reporters ask setup questions for the person who's answering it. And they'll lead them down a road with the question, and then a fifth grader can answer it. I'm not talking about answers for the president, I'm talking about press secretaries, etc. And how few of the reporters in a room ask serious, inquisitive questions that need to be asked. And I know at the beginning of the year, President Biden's press secretary said you had to submit your questions beforehand. Well, then they're just going to screen and take the ones that are softballs. That's not right. But I have deep concerns with our press that they aren't doing the job they're supposed to be doing. Uncovering bad things, digging deep for details, looking over the fence even if it's not your political side. Who cares? If one political side is doing something wrong, expose it. I want to know everything. So, reporters. I saw a news segment this week about a young girl that got bullied and tried to kill herself. That is one topic that is near and dear to my heart. I hate bullies. They wish to instill fear on you. And they wish to modify your behavior. And then they wish to make fun of you. I don't have any respect for a younger person or an older person that learns that behavior, and I have less respect for adults who are in charge of that young person and allow that behavior to continue. And if you are a parent and you know that your child bullies others, shame on you. You need to fix that right now. Right now. Because that behavior will carry through life. And the worst thing a school child can confront is a bully. Too many school kids have taken their lives because of bullies. Something I have zero patience with. And if you're a parent and you don't know how to control it, get some help. Go talk to your school counselor. Go talk to the school administrators. Go find a psychologist and get your kid in front of them. And if you can't afford it, look for some pro bono services. But to sit back and do nothing is horrific. The other day we talked about all the fires in the Midwest, outside Midwest, the West Coast, Colorado, Idaho, Montana, Arizona, New Mexico. Well, I was stunned this week to read a story, and the details were in AOL.com on August 11th. They said that an individual named Gary Maynard, 47 years old, a former professor at Santa Clara University and Sonoma State University, had charges filed against him by the U.S. Attorney's Office for arson. It said that the investigation started at the Cascade Fire in Mount Shasta on July 20th. An investigator went to the scene and found Maynard underneath a black Kia Soul stuck in the mud. Why would somebody be under the car unless they were trying to conceal themselves? Well, this is a U.S. Forest Service investigator that was out investigating a fire, sees him. Thinks, well, I don't know what was in his thought pattern, but he was in the area of a fire. Something was strange. Well, they got a court order and they put a tracking device on this person's car, and they tracked him to the scene of another fire that was just breaking out, apparently. Maynard has denied any involvement. There was another article in the San Jose Mercury News that reported Maynard was a Santa Clara University professor and he had taught criminal justice at past schools, other articles stated. Now, nothing to prove that Mr. Maynard is guilty of anything. He was just arrested. And that is another point I wish to make clear here in this news segment. Just because you see somebody who is arrested, don't jump to any conclusions, please. There's a lot of times where people are arrested and they're later found not guilty, or they're later have charges completely dropped. And our judicial system does not look negatively. It's not supposed to, on people that were arrested. The only thing that sticks with you for a lifetime is a conviction. So just because you see an arrest, don't think automatically that person's guilty. I've stated many times right here and in other venues at conferences that I'm big on education. And I don't care if you get education to be a plumber or an electrician, get it. Education's important. It carries with you a lifetime. Just because you get out of school at one point in your life doesn't mean you can't go back to school later in life, which is exactly what I did. I went back, got my master's degree later. And really, without that, I don't think that I would be today where I am writing books. Again, I could almost guarantee I wouldn't have been. So, education is huge. I think that you, as a parent, need to help your child get through school. And if that child is not getting a good education, if they are not getting a wholesome, truthful education, you need to pull them out of that venue, and you need to either homeschool them or you need to find a different private school for them. Or find a state that allows you to take that education from one school and you can take that certificate and go to another school. And there are states that are doing that now. Understand what is being taught in your classroom to your child. Keep that open door with your kids and want to hear every day what they're talking about in school. That's important. Reading, writing, arithmetic, science, some of the basic backbones of life. I read another article this week. The governor of Oregon signed a bill to allow students to graduate from high school without showing proficiency in reading, writing, or math. What? What? Friends, what in the heck is happening in our world? What good is a high school diploma if you don't have proficiency at something? If you can't read well, if you can't do basic math, addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, if you can't do the basics, you won't be able to balance your checkbook. You won't be able to balance your own finances. If you can't read and write, that means you can't comprehend. If you can't comprehend, your world is lost. thing they didn't teach in school to me is listening for understanding and listening to respond. Two different things. If I'm in a debate, I'm not so much interested in the background of how you knew your knowledge or what it meant to you. I have to respond to you quickly because I have judges sitting in front of me. That's the response. But listening to understand. If you have a child sitting in front of you and they're explaining to you why they did something, best to listen to understand why they did it. So listening to understand, good with your friends, not in a debate, but totally one tool in life that a majority of people never listened well to understand and never learned that tool. Very valuable. So why did this Oregon governor do this? Well, why would she say, we're going to give you a diploma from high school, but you don't even have to show any proficiency in anything that's important? Did the Teachers Association of Oregon agree to this? Why would you drop the bar so low? The answer was, oh, well, we're going to redo the system in 8 months and we just decided to do it now. No. Redo the system, find an answer, then drop the bar if you want to. If you have a realistic expectation to improve at some point. Dropping the bar just give kids a great way to sit back and say, I'm getting a diploma. What does it matter? See, when I was in school, my folks held me to a very high standard. And I needed to perform or I'd start losing things. And I didn't like that. So I made sure that I got good grades. And I made sure that I went to things after school to get counseling, to help, to understand. If I knew I was going downhill on a topic, I was going to figure it out. So I think those venues are important. I can guarantee you one thing. If I was a parent in the state of Oregon of a child in school, I'd either get them out of public schools or I'd find a private school or I'd homeschool. And if none of those options were available, then I'd move. Move quick. The most important thing as a parent is your child's education and their well-being as a person. And you need to take care of that as a parent. Next big newsworthy event. I call this President Biden's oil and gas history in the U.S. So, just the facts, 411. In 2019, the United States was oil independent. I don't care what news source you look at, it's all over, it says it. Okay? January 21st, 2021, President Biden canceled the Keystone Pipeline, putting a lot of people out of work and suspending any future oil into our country. January 22nd, the very next day, President Biden suspended all new oil and gas drilling on U.S. lands and waters. Okay, so no more oil coming in and no more future drilling. March 2021, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer did everything she could to shut down the Enbridge pipeline from Canada. Many of you probably haven't heard of this, but there was another pipeline that she has attempted with all legislation to shut down. And it might be shut down now. But it shows the attempts were made to shut down oil coming into the country and new drilling. In June of 2021, President Biden suspends all oil drilling leases in the Alaskan Arctic region. No more oil drilling up there. August 11th, 2021, President Biden asks OPEC to increase oil production. Come on, friends. You got to be smarter than this. I am not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but even with my dull blade, I can see that they want us importing oil and they don't want us producing our own oil. Or they don't want us getting cheap oil in here because the oil coming from Canada through that pipeline was a lot less expensive. What's about that? So, President Biden tells OPEC, the oil producing exporting countries, to increase their production if they can. Well, what's happened since January of 2021? First thing is, oil prices or gas prices are up 40%. 40%, that's a lot. Should concern everybody. I'm going to walk you through a scenario. Nearly everything in America is transported at some point by truck. Almost everything. One thing that's needed by those truckers to move across the U.S. is gas. It's one of the few variables that affects the cost of them moving across the U.S. A consistent one. And when those prices go up 40%, what do you think is going to happen to those items sitting in the back of the truck? Oh, what are those? Food, frozen food, fresh produce, meat. So if that transportation segment goes up almost by half, that's a pretty sizable increase to the things we need to live. Okay. A lot of people don't know this, but I'm telling you this now. So at the end of the month, U.S. mail prices are going up. Gee, everyone says, why is that? Because our mail is what? Trucked. That's right. It's trucked everywhere. So the U.S. Postal Service needs to recover more fees. So mail goes up. Where else are they going to get it? So gasoline is taken to the gas pumps by truck. Furniture is taken to the stores by truck. Appliances are trucked from ports to the stores. You commute to work, probably by car and using gas. Now, this is a scenario that was laid out to me that was just beautiful in its simplicity. Let's say you own a small fast food store. And you have 5 people working there 16 hours a day. And a year ago, they were making $10 an hour. Let's say now they're making $15 an hour. That is probably one of 2 of the largest costs in your business, next to food costs. And what is that small business owner going to do about that? Well, in a restaurant, margins are slim. All you need to do is study it a little bit. Margins are slim. He's got, or she has, to pass on those increasing costs. So those people that were earning minimum wage, maybe they're earning a little more than minimum wage now, but they've got to pass on those costs. Now, who they pass them on to? The people coming in the store, buying the hamburgers, hot dogs, whatever. So their prices just went up. But they also had to go up. Why? Because remember we were talking about the trucking fees to truck that food to that restaurant? So those prices also went up. So now we've got substantial increases to the most basic commodity that people have that are living at that lower end of the scale. Going to a burger joint, going to a taco stand. So are those increases in minimum wage really offsetting the increase in gas prices for the trucking of the food to the store? Are they really increasing a way of living when renters and housing has gone way up? Well, if you really look at the economics of it, and you look at the economics from a purely neutral standpoint, it's very hard to rationalize. Remember, everything rolls downhill to that final consumer point. People working in the fast food store making more money, food costs more money, transportation costs more money, prices go up, the people coming in the store are going to have to pay more. Where are we? We have inflation. Things starting to go up in price. Everything's going to go up in price. Everything goes up in price when gas goes up in price. It's a guarantee. And until you understand that most basic backbone of what moves America, it's hard to really grasp it. All right, on to the letters section. Hi, Dave. I'm finally going to relate an experience I had a long time ago. I've never told anyone about it, but your segments in the beginning of your videos got me thinking about it again. It may possibly address an idea that you have proposed regarding people possibly receiving communications mentally. I may have had a direct experience with the mechanism that would make that possible. I'll keep it brief. First, I have to relate an earlier experience that I think will provide some insight that is important to contrast with the one I'm going to discuss. At one time, I was heavily into meditation. I got proficient at shifting into deeply altered states of consciousness from the practice. That leads to the first experience I need to relate. One time, in a deeply altered state, I felt a sneeze coming. That sneeze response to a tickle in my nostril was building and was close to a full-blown sneeze when the words, "No sneeze," suddenly appeared in my mind. At which point the sneeze response didn't just die down, it instantly disappeared in the sense of never having been. Interesting in that I seemed to be an observer of the whole incident, but I'm satisfied that it was indeed another level of my own consciousness in action. The second experience happened a few years later at a time when I was no longer meditating. It was in the early 1980s, West Germany, and I was in the Army. It was a Sunday during warm weather. I had nothing to do and decided to go on a hike. I jumped on a train north and got off maybe 8 miles away from where I was stationed. There was a Volksmarch trail there that I could follow back. The area had a good mix of woods and meadows, and at one point I was walking through a meadow en route to more woods. I found myself intently watching a butterfly that was flying at about arm's reach in front of me, fairly well centered on me and maintaining that position relative to me as it flew. As I walked, it continued to maintain its position. Again, words appeared in my mind. This time, I can catch it. I observed my right hand raise up. I observed my right hand swipe down, and the butterfly was gone. At that point, the experience was over. It was then that I thought to look in my hand, but I hadn't caught it that way. Instead, the wings of the creature were pinned together between my middle and ring fingers. Anyone who has taken time to watch one of these things in flight and to notice how quickly they beat their wings would appreciate that you can't do something like that at will. That's true. I examined it carefully and saw that there wasn't the least bit of damage to its wings at all. I finally released it and flew off to my right and was soon lost to my sight. In this second case, I am certain that it was not me or any deeper state of consciousness. It just came on and I was along for the ride. I believe that the second event was somehow orchestrated. However, I also believe that the mechanism of consciousness at work is the first experience was what was leveraged into the second one. I am wondering now if the second time that my consciousness had been connected to a consciousness network of some sort, and if I had been hacked. I've never had another such experience since, and I find it interesting that the only time I had such experience is when I was outdoors alone. I can believe that there is a tie-in, at least to some of the cases of missing people that you discuss in your videos. Some of them may have had that same mechanism engaged, likely without being aware it was happening, and may well have been along for the ride at the same as me. I suspect that I may have weakened a firewall of storms that made me susceptible. Now I'm curious to know how many of the victims might have been practicing some sort of meditation themselves. Thanks for what you do. Keep up your work. Thank you. The answer is that if people were having some sort of meditation where they disappeared, I can't recall any case where someone came back and said they saw someone meditating or knew they were meditating, or someone said I was meditating. Never heard of that. So. Next letter. Here's a paranormal family story that happened to me when I was a kid. When I was 7 years old, my uncle was killed in a traffic accident on November 30th, 61 at the age of 31. We called him Uncle Blanc. He was a very nice Army veteran. My mom was his sister, and their family grew up with 9 brothers and sisters during the Great Depression. My father was a coal miner. The family lived in extreme poverty, even living at one point in a tent with my baby aunt in a box for a crib. At some point, the family moved back to Michigan. My uncle was unemployed at the time, married with 5 kids. The family was in a desperate situation. Someone, a total stranger, had come in his house out of the blue and offered him a job as a truck driver. The job seemed like a blessing. He was driving a semi-truck for this new job near Monroe, Michigan, where we lived, when a farm tractor pulled out in front of him. He swerved to miss the tractor. Strange things that happened were just prior to this. The strange things that happened were that just prior to the accident, he had picked up a hitchhiker. The man was a Catholic priest. When the tractor pulled out in front of the uncle, he shouted, "This is it!" and jumped from the truck, which then jackknifed and rolled on top of him, crushing him. I remember seeing a newspaper article showing a photo of the overturned truck and my uncle's arm showing from underneath the truck, his watch still ticking according to the gruesome reporting. The report said he probably would not have died had he not jumped from the truck. I don't know what this priest and my uncle discussed prior to the accident, but I think he was an angel telling my uncle what he needed to know spiritually about God at the opportune moment in time, in the very nick of time. The priest was uninjured and gave details to the police. Then he disappeared. Nobody got his name. He just was gone and never found. Right there, I find that very odd, because whenever police interview someone who's in an accident, they always get their name, and that name goes in the accident. In case they report an injury later, or in case there's some litigation, they always get a victim's or a witness's name in a vehicle accident, especially if they're in the vehicle. Always. He was just gone and never found. The story gets stranger. The driver of the farm tractor was never identified. He left the scene and was never found. My uncle's death devastated the family. He was my mom's baby brother, and I still remember her taking the call and hearing her screaming and screaming. My grandma was also severely devastated by the loss of her son. She was losing it. I remember the funeral was horrible, with an open casket, a terrible mistake. As a little kid, it seemed surreal. The strangest thing happened a few days later when my mom said her brother appeared to her in her room, walked up to her as she was in bed. My dad was snoring and sleeping right through it, and said, "Tell Mom I'm all right," and walked out of the room into the hallway and vanished. My mother said he was just a solid person, his normal self, and not ghostly in any way. It gave the family some peace that he was really okay. Sadly, one of his sons, my cousin, later committed suicide. It was sad he was schizophrenic or bipolar. Nobody ever talked about it. In those days, no one really thought about children's feelings or how this type of thing affected them. Suicide wasn't discussed. Feelings weren't discussed at all. The adults were all too caught up trying to deal with it themselves. I had another cousin on the other side of the family who also committed suicide in the 50s. It was talked about in whispers, then never talked about again. Mental illness was treated as shameful and to be hidden. I've always wondered about the strange coincidences that brought my uncle to that fateful moment. Your story about hitting the deer made me think of this. A second or two would have had a different outcome. I am a Christian, and my opinion is that the visitation from my uncle to my mother was what she needed to help her believe that we exist and go on after life, and will be with our loved ones. Thanks for that. You know, about suicide being not talked about, it being shameful. Thousands of people before me have said this. It's got to stop. It's got to be something we talk about, just like we talk about depression or we talk about happiness. It has to be a blatant part of our life. It has to be something that we accept that it's here and it's probably going to get worse before it gets better. And if our paradigm on that situation doesn't change and we don't find a way to deal with it and a way to address it head on, you are going to end up just like me, having horrific days and waves of emotion you can't control. If you even think someone in your family is contemplating suicide, go out there and sit down right next to them and say, hey, I'm really worried about you. I love you. I care about you. I want to help. Tell me what's going on in your life. Refer them to a NAMI location if they show any signs of depression. All right, next letter. I've wanted to write to you for a long time, but I've not had the guts to do so until now. It doesn't take guts. I'm just a normal guy. I'm like your neighbor. After I saw your video today, I felt like it was time to finally send this to you. I will try to keep this short. First, I'd like to tell you how much I enjoy your videos and all the research you've done. My husband and I are constantly thinking of hypotheses and scenarios as to the goings-on of our national parks around the world. Thank you for your hard work and honest research in creating a subject many talk about. This dialogue would not have happened if it weren't for you. Second, I'm so sorry for the pain and suffering you are going through. I wish I could tell you it will get easier, but your loss will be forever. However, because of this loss, you have unknowingly become a spokesperson for so many people out there who are struggling with mental health issues and suicide, especially this past year and a half that has been so difficult for many of us. I've had many horrible thoughts that haunt me daily. Your video about your son really hit it home for me. I've been very depressed, and unfortunately, suicide has crossed my mind more than I'd like to admit. I'm a female of 40 years. I graduated from law school at the top of my class 10 years ago. However, I took the exam twice and came so close but did not pass. After putting myself through undergrad and law school, I only had so much money to take the exam. Not passing was a very hard failure to swallow and struggle just writing this to you, as the tears come down my eyes. I've been trying to find my way in steady work that I enjoyed until COVID hit. I'm a very active person and do not do well sitting idle. Anyways, enough about me. No, I enjoyed hearing about it. What I want to say is that even though you have had to suffer something unimaginable, I want you to know that because of you and your videos, you've become my hero and advocate. I think of you and your son every day, especially when my thoughts start to go dark. I do not wish what happened to you to anyone, but because of what happened to you, you have become not only an advocate for so many of us, you have become a savior to so many people who have not written to you and told you this. You saved my life and continue to do so. I cannot thank you enough for what you do. During these times, so many do not have jobs or health care or money to get the help we need. I hope to try to help this. I've been working to form a nonprofit to help those people who do not have the means to do this on their own. If it was not for you, I may not have been here to try and find a better path. I cannot thank you enough. Just remember, every time you want to cry, then cry. But always remember to not torture yourself for your loss as giving you a bigger gift. You have truly saved more people than you know. Thank you very much. Now, I wrote this person a story. I'm going to tell you what I wrote. Is that back when I was a police officer, I probably testified in court 1,000 times, really. I was on many proactive teams. We made tons of arrests, and going to court was just part of the work, almost every day. And during those times, I met a lot of attorneys, and on the whole, they were great people. Well, a lot of these district attorneys write search warrants for us. And many of those other people that were either in law school or doing things aligned with the attorneys were writing the search warrants or writing the writs or writing the appeals. And there was this one person there that was brilliant. And, I mean, super smart. And he was recognized by a partner in this law firm as being brilliant and asked to come to his office and start reviewing some judicial documents on a case. And then he asked him to write the appeal on the case. And this partner said it was the best job that he had ever seen. Well, this person, without even a law degree, became the chief legal aid for this law firm and wrote almost all of the writs and all of the appeals, and made a huge living doing it, and was considered a very valuable part of that law firm. So just because you don't pass the bar, your knowledge base can go a long way. So I would tell that person, please don't give up. I mean, there's some real huge venues out there for you to explore. So, remember I talked to you about the Dixie Fire and that man that was arrested. I'm going to get into the visual aids part of the program. So this is the Dixie Fire out here in Northern California. This is Lake Tahoe. It's about 60 miles northwest of Lake Tahoe, the border. It's at 515,000 acres. It is huge right now, and it isn't totally contained in the least. They're still trying to get total containment on it. And the area northwest of the fire, up into Lassen National Park, has been evacuated because they're afraid the fire is going to move that direction. It's horrible. So, enough about the Dixie Fire. I do want to talk to you about two recent cases that I did videos about. And one of them was about Esther Dingley, 37 years old. She disappeared right on the French and Spanish border. She was backpacking. Her boyfriend that she normally backpacked with couldn't go. He recently had an operation. Well, she last contacted her boyfriend on November 22nd. I'm not going to go through the whole case, but I just want to walk you through it. You can watch the previous video. I'll list it here. But she talked to her boyfriend on November 22nd, kind of explained the route she was going to go on. And then she was reported missing 2 days later when she didn't recontact the boyfriend. Well, there was a huge search for 2 weeks. In November, they found nothing. November into December, they found nothing. Nothing. Well, after that, there were multiple other searches. And in one of the search protocols, it said that rain and thunderstorms interrupted the searchers. Well, Dan Colgate was the boyfriend, and he and Esther had met when they were in college. Both really smart people. After a backpacker found one bone on a trail, they found it was human. They went back into that area, and then they found Esther's skull. Then they searched, and they hit this in inclement weather. So they hit inclement weather and the searchers just gave up. I guess that was the implication. Well, Dan, the boyfriend, said baloney, and he and Esther's mom went into that area and started searching nonstop. They searched for days in a grid pattern, walking back and forth and back and forth. Dan Colgate and Esther's mom, you have my heart, because Dan ended up finding her remains. The items were strewn along a rocky and boulder hillside. The skull was found in July. The rest of the remains were found August 9th of 2021 this year. And right near her remains was a phone, her backpack, some water in a bottle, and they haven't found her ultralight tent. Some thoughts are maybe the wind blew it away because it was ultralight. Colgate made a statement, Dan made a statement while they were searching for Esther initially, that she would not have died from injuries incurred in her hike. She was too experienced. That's what he said. Well, the police, after they found the body, said that they believe she fell 20 to 30 meters down the side of this hill. It was an area that was previously searched, not found by searchers. Boulders, water throughout this area. Canine and cadaver dogs didn't pick up a scent. Sound familiar? They haven't determined the cause of death yet. This was Esther. Smart, super smart, attractive young lady. Now, I reviewed probably 30 different articles in preparation for what I just gave you. One of the things that one of the articles said is that her boots were worn and maybe that caused her to slip and fall. Maybe. As I've stated here dozens of times, when you are alone and you are in the wilderness and you're in the middle of nowhere, you are much more careful than you are when you have friends with you. Because you know if something happens, you're in deep trouble. True. So whatever happened to Esther Dingley, we will probably never know. But at this point, I would call it a profile match to my research. Several bodies of water were throughout that area, boulders. She wasn't in an area that she told Dan that she was going to be going. The French police called Dan in and questioned him at length because he was the one that found the body, even though they said that he is not a suspect. I probably would have done the same thing. But Dan, good job. My heart's with you that you lost your girlfriend. And you know what? I'm sure he has some guilt because he wasn't with her. And I bet he thinks he could have saved her. Next case, another case we talked about, another video I made, and I'll put the first video link up here. Philip Kreycik, 37 years old. Now stop for a second. Remember how old I told you Esther was? 37. Philip Kreycik, 37. Just a coincidence, I guess. Philip disappeared July 10th, 2021. He's supposedly going on an 8-mile hike in Pleasanton Regional Park in Pleasanton, California. He's an ultra-marathoner. Marathoners are a subset of a group that disappears that I've written about. There was a huge search for Philip. Helicopters, canines, FLIR, 12 different law enforcement agencies, hundreds of searchers. So he disappears July 10th, and he's not found. Now, a Pleasanton police lieutenant named Niederhaus made the following statement. So now we're pretty much 100% covered the area where he could have been, should have been, or would have shown up. That was when they ended the search for Philip Kreycik. 100%. You heard it. For a lieutenant in the police department to say that, he had to have been pretty sure that they covered the entire area where they thought he'd be. So, weeks after this, a person's walking down that trail near where Philip disappeared. And they see a game trail that looks just like the normal trail, and they take the game trail. And they walk out 250 yards off the main trail, and guess what they found? Philip. Under some bushes, deceased. They haven't determined the cause of death. I'm sure it's going to be either a heat exhaustion or hypothermia, one of the two. How did they miss him? 250 yards off the main trail. How did they miss him? Cadaver dogs can pick up a scent miles from the body. Why didn't they pick up a scent? They've already done an initial autopsy and said there was no foul play. The weather was over 100 degrees when he disappeared. He's found by a volunteer, not by searchers. So, that's Philip. Let me give you that quote again. So now, this is by Lieutenant Chris Niederhaus. So now, we pretty much 100% covered where he could have been, should have been, or would likely show up. Philip left behind a family, and I'm heartbroken that this man passed away and his family is going to be without him. I'm heartbroken. Now, do I blame the searchers on Phil's case? No. Not 1%. Because if you follow my research, this happens all the time. Maybe searchers can be negligent and miss a body. That happens, sure. But when you bring in multiple canine teams and cadaver dogs and they miss that, I don't believe it. Sorry. So the next case is one that I can't say right now is a 411 case, but when you hear all these facts, you're going to shudder at what's going on. Person's name is John Stivers, 52 years old, lived in Tuolumne County, California. He went missing August 2nd of this year, 2021. He was raised in Georgia, and he had a horticulture degree from Auburn University. He's married, had one 14-year-old daughter. And the family owned Lake Tulloch Marine and RV. And they lived on Calypso Bay in Lake Tulloch. Lake Tulloch was a center point in their life. Beautiful place. This is like in the foothills of the Sierras, north. Well, on August 2nd in the morning hours, John Stivers was with his wife in their house. And John was doing the books for the business. And he was doing payroll. His wife made lunch, they had lunch, and then he was driving to a bank in Sonora, California to make the deposits. And he got there and he made the deposits. He was driving a Chevy white van that held about 12 or 14 people that he would use to move people around, but that's the van he was driving. And after he went to the bank at Sonora, he left. And at 2 o'clock, he called his wife and said he was going to stop by and pick up their RV for a trip the family was going to make that weekend to Lake Tahoe. The three of them were going to drive up to Lake Tahoe and have a little bit of a break from work. That was the last time the wife heard from him. He didn't return home. That night, she calls the sheriff. Reports him as missing. Unbeknownst to the wife, earlier in the day, somebody had called in that van as a suspicious vehicle just outside of Sonora. That's kind of weird. Well, the sheriff goes out, finds the van, and it's on Campo Seco Road near Golden Banks Road. Well, the van is found facing Jamestown south of Campo Seco. The sheriff goes out there and searches that area for 3 days with dogs, canines, people walking grid patterns, drones. Well, the weird thing is this van is parked right next to a pond, and there aren't a lot of ponds in this area, which is kind of weird. Let me walk you through this here. So this is John Stivers. Good family man, hard worker, known to the community. This is the wanted poster they have for him. Hasn't been found. There's this blanket of time between about 2 and 4:30 in the afternoon where nobody can really say what happened to John. Talked to his wife and he disappeared, and then the van shows up and he's gone. This is the van that he was driving. Kind of get a feeling for 2013 Chevy passenger van. Now, here's the map that kind of tells you everything about this here. Okay. He and his family lived at Calypso Bay over here on Lake Tulloch. This is where his business was on Lake Tulloch. But at noon, he leaves Lake Tulloch. He drives. It's a 24-minute drive up into Sonora. And he goes to the bank. Right after leaving the bank, he calls his wife. The conversation we talked about. And his van ends up here, kind of in the middle of nowhere. Kind of strange. 4 points to consider. Leaving the house, his business, where the van's located, and where he went to the bank. Now you think maybe robbery was a motive, but no, nobody thinks the robbery is a motive because he already deposited all their funds. So what happened? Right away, I started thinking about this, and I said, well, he spent the morning with his wife. He did the payroll. He's planning a weekend with his kid and his wife. He didn't run away. That just doesn't make any sense to me. So then it's kind of appears to be criminal. But there's water there. So maybe it's a 411 case. But then I kept looking deeper. There's an article that said that 8 people are missing in Tuolumne County since May of 2021. 8 people. There are 5 people missing in the last 40 days. What? So, let me tell you. So this is one of the people that's missing in Tuolumne County. And I'll read you what it says. Detectives seeking leads on Sonora man's disappearance. Sheriff detectives are seeking the public's help in finding 37-year-old Mark Blodgett of Sonora. Mark was last living in a transient camp off Stockton Street in Sonora. Friends and family have not seen or heard from Mark in a few months. Please help. Okay. Next case. Local man missing since April. Detectives seeking leads. Sheriff's detectives are looking for the public and to help locating a missing man, 38-year-old Robert Baiko, B-A-I-K-O of Sonora. Robert's family and friends have not seen or heard from him since late April of this year. Now, I did my darndest to find the remaining cases and photos, and there's nothing online about them. But there's one other thing online, that the same day that Mr. Stivers disappears, a woman named Heather Jones, 37 years old, disappears, same day, in Tuolumne County. And there's nothing online about it. And then one article also said that Brian Schrader, Cody Ragsdale, Jordan Catania, and Thomas Guyen also disappeared within that 3 or 4 month window that they talked about. Something strange is going on in Tuolumne County. Something really strange. And if I was a resident up there, I'd be really careful who I'd be talking to. So, anyhow, this has been a long video, and I'm sorry I took so much of your time. If you can, and you like it, please give me a thumbs up. If you could, pass this on to your social media contacts and let people know that missing people is near and dear to our heart. And I will be here to present the facts, the news facts and the regular facts, because a lot of you are not getting the truth. So look for that in the future. In the meantime, be safe, Carrier Personal Locator Beacon. If you don't know what that is, look it up. And if you're going to buy a present for a hiker or a hunter, get that for them at their next birthday or Christmas. Appreciate you being here. Have a great week.